Bible studies always good.
Keep it on this book.
The scriptures.
Well, it's good that you told her. I don't know what the sound effects were is, but it's good that you told her.
Hi, Karen. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good
to see you.
Good to see you.
Hello, hello. Good to see everybody. Hello, lady.
Yeah, how you doing?
Hey Isaac, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing all right.
Medium, high,
John,
almost
doing all right?
high.
Doing good. How you doing, Isaac?
Well, I've been better, but I've been worse.
You been better?
I've been worse.
Aren't you springy today? That's your spring tie oil.
I know it.
They say you bring it in the spring.
I'm tired of being cold outside. I like this one.
All right, we're in Exodus 25th chapter, which is page 59 on your handout. Donna asked a question last week. Now, I promised her I would get her an answer.
But I'm here. A lot of times they're not here. Someone asks a question, they're not here.
Well, you're here tonight.
Yes.
But Pat's not feeling well. She's not here tonight. Cody Shrimpster gets out of the hospital tomorrow. But he's homeless, so I don't know where he's going to try to live.
I think he said he was going to try to stay with his grandfather. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I've been out there a couple times. Yeah.
I'm glad you did see him, Isaac.
Yeah, I've seen him a couple times.
Good.
Yeah, I didn't know that, and I don't think Jared knew that either.
Yeah.
I don't really.
Been a couple times.
Other than that, Sharon, of course, is still recovering. And can't think of anything else right now. But anyway, the question Donna asked is in Exodus 25th chapter, verse 5. And so we'll spend a little bit of time on that tonight to answer that question. And before we do, though, let's go to our Heavenly Father in prayer. Our most loving Heavenly Father, we thank Thee so much for this day and for the many blessings that You've given us. And we thank Thee for the spiritual blessings and the promise of everlasting life. We'll be faithful to Thee. We're thankful, Father, that we can gather together to study Thy Word without fear of persecution. We pray that You would continue to be with us as we study the book of Exodus, that we might have a full understanding of those things You want us to know so that we can be the kind of children You want us to be. We ask, Father, that You'd be with our members who have physical ailments, that they might be restored to their health. We ask that You'd be with the McBride family as they continue to mourn for the loss of a loved one and use us as instruments to be of comfort to them. We're thankful, Father, for our upcoming gospel meeting. We ask that You would be with Brother Banning as he prepares the lessons, that he might be able to prepare lessons that would be most needed for this congregation, that we might grow spiritually, and that with that spiritual growth would be numerical growth. We're thankful for the many visitors that's been coming our way, Father, and we ask that You would use us as instruments to reach out to them, to be an encouragement to them as they've been an encouragement to us. And we ask, Father, that You would be with us, that we might always give You the praise and the glory, that we might not ever bring any shame or reproach upon Thee or upon the church. These things we ask in Jesus Christ's holy name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, Exodus 25 and verse 5. Hi, Debbie. Let's read verse 3, 4, and 5, and we'll focus on verse 5. Isaac, you want to read those for me?
This is the contribution which you are to raise from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet material, fine linen, goat hair, ram skins dyed red, and horseless skins, acacia wood.
Mm-hmm.
You want one more or what?
No, just through verse 5.
Okay.
Now, New King James Version, and John, are you mad at me?
No, that thing.
Oh, you're mad at that thing, huh?
Yeah, it won't let me come in and get it up there.
Okay. The New King James Version uses the word badger. And there may be another version or two that uses the word badger.
Well, if you pick it up, I'll just have to knock it down again.
Well, please don't do that. Most of the versions, though, use the word seal skin. So Donna asked the question, why the contradiction? Very good question. You'll find that word not only in Exodus 25, verse 5, but you'll also find it in Exodus 26, verse 14, Exodus 35, verse 7, and verse 23, Exodus 39, verse 34, and then in Numbers chapter 4, verse 6. But turn to Ezekiel, the 16th chapter, and verse 10.
Ezekiel 6.
You said 16:10?
Yes. You had that, Ron?
I clothed you in embroidered cloth and gave you sandals of badger skin. I clothed you with fine linen and covered you with silk.
Okay. Now, so you find that word badger skin there if you're using New King James Version, but if you're using some other versions, it would be seal skin. Okay? What has happened is our translators seem to have been misled by the similarity in sound of the Hebrew word. This is the Hebrew word here, tachus, and the Latin word, which is tachus. Both these words mean badger. Okay? However, the revisers have correctly substituted seal skins. The Arabs of the Sinaitic Peninsula apply the name tukash, which is this word, okay, to the seals, and the dugons. These are actually sea cows. They're very docile. Both these creatures are prominent in the Mediterranean. Now keep in mind, we're looking at the Sinai. They're down here at Mount Sinai, okay? So you have this peninsula here, and you have the Red Sea, and of course they crossed the Red Sea up here, but you have the Red Sea down here, and up here you have the Mediterranean. Well, the Red Sea, though, is where the dugons live in shallow water. They feed on the seaweed. They're very docile, they're very easy to catch. And so, the badger is common in Palestine, and it might occur in the wilderness, but its small hide would have been useless as a tent covering. So badger is not a good word. Okay? The dugong is very plentiful, as I mentioned, in these shallow waters. And as a marine animal, depending on which commentary you look at, they can grow from 12 feet to 30 feet in length. Probably more commonly 12 to 18 feet. One commentary I saw was the extreme of 12 to 30. Most of them was 12 to 18. There's something as far as size between a whale and a seal. They never leave the water, but as I mentioned, they're very easily caught because they graze on seaweed and is known by naturalists as Halicore tabernaculi. I just learned that word yesterday. I had to use it in a sentence today. Okay, so Barnes says badger skins, rather leather, probably of a sky blue color. This is the other thought, is that what God was talking about here was a color, not a creature. Formed from the skins of a general name for marine animals, okay, which was well adapted as a protection against the weather. Certainly seal skins, dugong skins would be well adapted for this protection. The Septuagint version calls them hyacinth or blue skins. Hyacinths, for especially you ladies, you know that that's a purplish flower. And
Not necessarily, they
I didn't know that.
They can be different colors. They can be yellow, they can be purple, they can be...
For my story, it's a purplish flower.
You did look at her when you said it.
Now, The tabernacle, as we will get into it, you will find is very colorful. Okay, God intended for it to be colorful and well adorned, if you will. So the Septuagint version calls them hyacinth or blue skins, according to which they seem to be the ram skins dyed blue. And that could be the case here. If it's not seal skins, it could be where he says in verse 5, ram skins dyed red, badger skins. Instead of badger skins, it could be ram skins dyed purple. Okay? Josephus seems to have understood it, and is much questionable whether the same creature is meant we call the badger, since with the Israelites, the badger was an unclean animal. However, I don't totally agree with Josephus, because when you think about it, what sea creatures, what were the criteria for them to be clean?
It had scales.
Had to have scales. What else? They had to have fins. Seal doesn't have scales. The dugong doesn't have scales. So technically they're an unclean animal as well. However, what did Christ ride into Gethsemane on? Huh?
Donkey.
Donkey.
Yes.
Was the donkey clean or unclean?
Unclean.
It was unclean. What criteria was used for clean animals? Had to have cloven hooves
Chewing a cud.
and had to chew a cud. Yes, John.
Clean or unclean is whether you eat it or not whether
Exactly
you use
right.
it.
Exactly right. So don't get ahead of me here now.
If you're not going to eat the donkey, then you can use it all you want to.
Well, some people eat the donkeys. But don't get ahead of me. My point is that that would not eliminate the use of seal skins, okay? Even though they're unclean. So for the Septuagint to point out that the badger is unclean, it would also have to allow that the seal skins are unclean as well. The other thing about the badger, though, is the badger was not really known to be in this area, okay? And like I say, with such a small creature, it would take a lot of badger skins to accomplish what God wanted accomplished here. So probably it is seal skins or dugong, which is the same thing, same type of creature, okay? Sea cow is the common name for them. But it could be a color where they dyed the wool of the sheep a purple color. And we'll see an artist's rendition of the tabernacle later on. But
It seems unlikely that it's not, I mean, it doesn't seem likely that it's purple, because in verse 4 it says blue, purple, so if they're going to translate a word,
right,
I mean, or use a word, it looks like it would have used purple. I mean, it doesn't seem likely that badger would be, a substitute for purple, just because
Well, it wouldn't-
purple's already been used, is what I'm
Well,
saying.
but it's just saying here that this is what you're going to adorn it with. You're going to adorn it with blue, you're going to adorn it with purple, you're going to adorn it with scarlet thread, fine linen, and goat's hair, and then you're going to adorn it with ram skins dyed red, okay, and then badger skins in the case of wood. Probably it's seals. I'm just giving you the Septuagint, and I'm giving you Josephus' comments on it as well.
One said porpoise skins.
Porpoise skins,
Yeah.
same type, in the same species, basically. A smooth skin that is very tough and resilient to water. Okay?
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. I promised you I'd look it up, and I did.
There's no more than we really wanted to know.
And you still may be confused. I don't know.
Well, probably, I always say, but thank you.
I'll never remember that.
All right, we're in Exodus 25. We're going to begin with verse 17 tonight. And we're still looking at the ark. But tonight we'll deal with the mercy seat. And it's verses 17 through 22. Shelton, you want to read that for me, please?
Through 22.
Yes, please.
You shall make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2.5 cubits shall be its length, and 1.5 cubits its width. And you shall make 2 cherubim of gold. Of hammered work you shall make them at the 2 ends of the mercy seat. Make 1 cherub at one end, and the other cherub at the other end. You shall make the cherubim at the 2 ends of it of one piece with the mercy seat. And the cherubim shall stretch out their wings above, covering the mercy seat with their wings, and they shall face one another. The faces of the cherubim shall be toward the mercy seat. You shall put the mercy seat on top of the ark, and in the ark you shall put the testimony that I will give you. And there I will meet with you, and I will speak with you from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim which are on the ark of the testimony, about everything which I will give you in commandment to the children of Israel.
Okay. So on top of the Ark of the Covenant, and this is maybe a little bit difficult to see, but here's your Ark of the Covenant, and here's your mercy seat, and here's the cherubims, okay? The mercy seat is not really a seat, but it is translated from a word which has the root meaning of to cover, pointing to the forgiveness of sins, because atonement was made by sprinkling the blood of expiation on the mercy seat. Go to Leviticus, the 16th chapter, and look at verses 14 and 15. Karen?
Leviticus 16,
Yes,
14 and
Leviticus
15.
chapter 16, verses 14 and 15.
And he shall take of the blood of the bullock and sprinkle it with his finger upon the mercy seat eastward. And before the mercy seat shall he sprinkle of the blood with his finger 7 times. Then shall he kill the goat of the sin offering that is for the people, and bring his blood within the veil, and do with that blood as he did with the blood of the bullock, and sprinkle it upon the mercy seat and before the mercy seat.
Okay, so this blood was sprinkled in as an atonement. The mercy seat represented God's mercy. It covered the law and was placed over the law to remind us that God's mercy has to provide for man's transgressions of his law. The shadow of the wings of the cherubim fitly represent God's protecting care, if you will. The cherubims are mentioned as guardians of the Garden of Eden and the Tree of Life. Go back to Genesis chapter 3 and verse 24. You had that, John?
Yep. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims in a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the Tree of Life.
Okay, so they were mentioned as guardians here, but then they were also mentioned as the forces of nature in operation in Psalm 18 and verse 10. Debbie, you had that?
And he rode upon a cherubim and he flew upon the wings of the wind.
Cherubim were also woven into an embroidered, embroidered, I might say, upon the inward curtain of the tabernacle. Look at Exodus 26 and verse 1, and I'll read that because I don't have it up there. But it says, "Moreover, you shall make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine woven linen and blue, purple, and scarlet thread, with artistic designs of cherubim. You shall weave them." And then you can read a little bit further in Exodus 26, which would continue on. But also, cherubims were embroidered on the veil, if you will. Look at the 31st verse of chapter 26. Again, I didn't put that up there. But in verse 31, it says, "Ye shall make a veil woven of blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and fine woven linen. It shall be woven with an artistic design of cherubim." Okay? So, In the temple, 2 cherubim were placed in the Holy of Holies by Solomon. Look at 1 Kings chapter 6 and verse 23, Stephanie.
Inside the inner sanctuary he made 2 cherubim of olive wood, each 10 cubits high.
So the Ark of the Covenant with its mercy seat then was quite clearly the most important object in the tabernacle proper. What the mercy seat symbolized, though, for Israel and typified for us, Christ has fully accomplished both. Look at Romans chapter 3 and verse 25, Florence.
Whom God set forth as a by his blood through faith to demonstrate his righteousness, because in his forbearance God had passed over the sins and were previously committed. Am I right? Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Romans 3, verse 25. Donna, read Hebrews chapter 9, and we'll begin at verse 5, but read through verse 7.
And above it were the cherubim of glory, overshadowing the mercy seat. But of these things we cannot now speak in detail. Now, when these things have been so prepared, the priests are continually entering the outer tabernacle, performing the divine worship. But into the second, only the high priest enters once a year, not without taking blood, which he offers for himself for the sins of the people committed in ignorance.
Okay. And of course, you could read further in Hebrews 9 to complete the thought there. But the idea is the mercy seat symbolized for Israel and typified for us. Christ has indeed fully accomplished both when it comes to the 2 cherubims, the purpose of the cherubims. Any comments through verse 22?
I'm missing what the both is.
The
Well, they
both
accomplished
is
both.
the both is the protecting care, okay, and the protecting care and the mercy, okay. And Jesus Christ has accomplished both of those for us. Any other thoughts or questions? All right, let's look at verses 23 through 30 then. And also, this is in chapter 37, verses 10 through 16, but we'll look at 23 through 30. And this is dealing with the table of the shewbread. You want to read 7 verses?
If I decide to stop, I'll let somebody take over.
Okay.
You shall also make a table of acacia wood, and 2 cubits shall be its length, a cubit its width, and a cubit and a half its height. And you shall overlay it with pure gold, and make a molding of gold all around. You shall make for it a frame of a handbreadth all around, and you shall make a gold molding for the frame all around. And you shall make it 4 rings of gold, and put the rings on the 4 corners that are at its 4 legs. The rings shall be close to the frame as holders for the poles to bear the table. And you shall make the poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold, that the table may be carried with them. You shall make its dishes, its pans, its pitchers, and its bowls for pouring. You shall make them of pure gold. And you shall set the showbread on the table before me always.
Okay. So as we continue here, you can see God is very elaborate in what he expects of his people and everything. Very descriptive of what he wants. The table of showbread was to be constructed of acacia wood, measuring 2 cubits long by 1 cubit wide by 1.5 cubits high. It was overlaid with pure gold, as we read there, and had a crown of gold around the top of it. Rings of gold were attached to it through which staves could be placed for moving the table of shewbread. Just the same as the Ark of the Covenant, you had these rings. There was a specific procedure in how they were to be moved. It was to be placed in the north side of the holy place. On it were placed 12 cakes, renewed each week in 2 piles. Look at Leviticus, the 24th chapter, and verses 5 through 9. Isaac, you have that?
Then you shall take fine flour and bake 12 cakes with it. 2/10 of an ephah shall be in each cake. You shall set them in 2 rows, 6 to a row, on a pure gold table before the Lord. You shall put pure frankincense on each row, that it may be a memorial portion for the bread, even an offering by fire to the Lord. Every Sabbath day ye shall set in order before the Lord continually. It is an everlasting covenant for the sons of Israel. It shall be for Aaron and his sons, and they shall eat it in a holy place, for it is most holy to him from the Lord's offerings by fire, his portion forever.
Okay. So each week, these 12 cakes had to be renewed. And they were in 2 piles, together with the dishes for the bread. The spoon, which was the incense cups, and flagons and bowls for drink offerings was on this table. All of these were made of pure gold, according to verse 29. The loaves could be eaten by the priest on the Sabbath, but only where?
In the holy place.
In the holy place. Very restrictive. The 12 loaves constituted a perpetual thank offering to God from the 12 tribes for the blessings that they received from him day by day. They represented each of the 12 tribes. And the idea of the table of showbread was that of a constant memorial, a continual acknowledgement of God's goodness in providing for man's physical needs. The loaves, furthermore, point toward Jesus Christ, who was the bread of life. Look at John, the 6th chapter, verses 32 through 35. Ron?
Then Jesus said to them, Most assuredly I say to you, Moses did not give you the bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. The bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. Then they said to him, Lord, give us this bread always. And Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall never hunger. He who believes in me shall never thirst.
So as the bread of the tabernacle supplied the priest, so Jesus Christ meets the needs of his children in this dispensation. We now look to a new table, however, and that is the Lord's table, in which there is fellowship in his death and in his resurrection. Any comments or questions through verse 30? Yes, Pat.
I'm wondering about the flagons and the wine. They put that on the table with the bread.
We'll get to that. There's a specific purpose of that as well. And so just hang on. I won't leave you hanging, but I'll get it for you, okay?
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, let's look at verses 31 through 40 then. Shelton?
You shall also make a lampstand of pure gold. The lampstand shall be hammered work. Its shaft, its branches, its bowls, its ornamental knobs, and flower shall be of one piece, and 6 branches shall come out of its sides. 3 branches of the lampstand out of one side, and 3 branches of the lampstand out of the other side. 3 bowls shall be made like almond blossoms, on one branch, with an ornamental knob and a flower. And 3 bowls made like almond blossoms on the other branch, with an ornamental knob and a flower. And so for the 6 branches that come out of the lampstand. On the lampstand itself, 4 bowls shall be made like almond blossoms, each with its ornamental knob and flower. And there shall be a knob under the first 2 branches of the same, a knob under the second 2 branches of the same, and a knob under the third 2 branches of the same, according to the 6 branches that extend from the lampstand. Their knobs and their branches shall be of one piece, all of it shall be one hammered piece of pure gold. You shall make 7 lamps for it, and they shall arrange its lamps so that they give light in front of it. And its wick trimmers and their trays shall be of pure gold. It shall be made of a talent of pure gold with all these utensils. And see to it that you make them according to the pattern which was shown you on the mountain.
Okay. Now, this is a picture of what the lampstand would look like, or candlestick is another word that some versions will use, okay? It's also found in the 37th chapter, verses 17 through 24. The golden lampstand was one of the most ornate objects in the holy place. The candlestick was made of pure gold. It was beaten, not molded. So the craftsmanship is very detailed in this candlestick. Its dimensions are not given, but the branches were decorated with almond-shaped bowls or cups, according to verse 33 that Sheldon read. It had 1 lamp on the top and 1 on each of its 6 branches, extending toward or upward in pairs. It was situated on the south side of the holy place. Now, which side was the table of showbread? North side. So if you look at the holy place, and I'll show you a picture of the whole thing eventually, then you had the north side and you had the south side. And whether you realize it or not, these 12 tribes, you had 3 on each side of this tabernacle. 3 tribes on each side of the tabernacle. So you had north, west, or north, south, east, and west. Okay? So the lamp of the lampstand were to be trimmed every evening at sunset, and again in the morning, according to Exodus 27. Let's see here. I don't know if I don't have it. Yeah, Exodus 27 verses 20 and 21. Karen.
And thou shalt command the children of Israel that they bring the pure olive oil beaten for the light, to cause the lamp to burn always. In the tabernacle of the congregation without the veil, which is before the testimony, Aaron and his sons shall order it from evening to morning before the Lord. It shall be a statute forever unto their generations on the behalf of the children of Israel.
Now look at chapter 30 and verses 7 and 8, John.
And Aaron shall burn thereon sweet incense every morning when he dressed the lamps. He shall burn incense upon it, and when Aaron lighteth the lamps at evening, he shall burn incense upon it, a perpetual incense before the Lord throughout your generations.
Okay, and then we go to Leviticus, the 24th chapter, verses 3 and 4. Now remember what I told you last week, the book of Leviticus encompasses only about 30 days. And what it's encompassing is what we're talking about right now. The Israelites have been about 9 months at this point from Egypt, and God's given these instructions, and the tabernacle is to be built, and Leviticus certainly lists all the laws and everything over a period of 30 days, which is what we're seeing here in Exodus as well. But look at Leviticus 24, verses 3 and 4, Debbie.
3 and 4, 2 to 4.
You what? Yeah.
Okay. Command the children of Israel that they bring to you pure oil of pressed olives for the light, to make the lamps burn continually. Outside the veil of the testimony in the tabernacle of meeting, Aaron shall be in charge of it from evening until morning before the Lord continually. And it shall be a statute forever in your generation. He shall be in charge of the lamps on the pure gold lampstand before the Lord continually.
Okay. Now notice what is Debbie read there. What kind of oil was it?
Olive oil.
Olive oil.
But what kind of olive oil?
Pressed.
pure olive oil. No contaminants, no substitutions, but pure olive oil. And so you see the labor and the work that's taking place here. Also, they were never to be extinguished all at one time. Each one of these lights, or candles, if you will, was never to be extinguished all at one time. A special ordinance was established to keep it supplied with pure olive oil. Exodus 27, verse 20, which we read, and also Leviticus 24 and verse 2, which Debbie read. Some have estimated the value of this lampstand alone. Remember now, it's pure gold. Now, this is not current market value. I'm not sure exactly the date of when this was decided, but $33,804.
Not to mention labor.
Yeah.
Labor was free. So, the function of the lampstand was to provide light for the priests who were serving in the holy place. By the power of God's revelation, the Israelites were to let their light shine to all the nations of the earth. From a symbolic point of view, then, it quite clearly typifies the Lord Jesus Christ, who is the true light. Look at John, the 1st chapter, verses 6 through 9, Stephanie.
There was a man sent from God whose name was John. This man came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light which gives light to every man coming into the world.
And then, Florence, look at John 8, verse 12. John chapter 8, verse 12.
I'll just read it. Then Jesus spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life.
Okay, so you see the symbolic point here of this lampstand. It seems also to point to believers who in this age are indeed the light of the world. We as believers, you remember Jesus preaching on the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew the 5th chapter and verse 14. Donna?
I have it.
Oh, Florence.
Here
Yeah.
on the light of the world, the city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden.
I forgot Florence passed back to Stephanie.
Yeah, so I went on to,
kind of took it.
yeah.
In football, that would have been an illegal pass.
That's why we don't play.
Why they
So-
call it a lateral.
Yeah. So in the book of Revelation, the church is also symbolized by the golden candlestick or lampstand. Look at Revelations, the 1st chapter, and verses 10 through 20, Donnie. You get a good one here.
You just had to skip it. I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a loud voice like the sound of a trumpet, saying, Write in a book what you see and send it to the 7 churches, to Ephesus and to Smyrna and to Pergamum and to Thyatira and Sardis, to Philadelphia and to Laodicea. Then I turned to see the voice that was speaking with me, and having turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands. In the middle of the lampstands, I saw one like a son of a man, clothed in a robe reaching to his feet and girded across his chest with a golden sash. His head and his hair were white like white wool, like snow, and his eyes were like a flame of fire. His feet were like burnished bronze when it has been made to glow in the furnace, and his voice was like the sound of many waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and out of his mouth came a sharp 2-edged sword, and his face was like the sun shining in the street. And when I saw him, I fell at his feet like a dead man, and he placed his right hand on me, saying, Do not be afraid, I am the first, the last, and the living one. And I was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore, and I have the keys of the death and of Hades. Therefore write the things which you have seen, the things which are, and the things which will take place after these things. As for the mystery of the 7 stars which you saw in my right hand, and the 7 golden lampstands, the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches.
Okay. So, the book of Revelation, then, the church is symbolized by the golden candlestick. Now, in this chapter, pattern is found, the word pattern is found in the New Testament. But here in this chapter, look at verse 9.
Are you talking about in?
Chapter 25 of Exodus. Verse 9 says, according to all that I show you, that is the pattern of the tabernacle. Now look at verse 40 of chapter 25. And see to it that you make them according to the pattern which was shown you on the mountain. It was important for Moses to follow the pattern which God gave him. Today, you and I have a pattern to follow as well for the church, which also must be followed if we are to be well-pleasing to Him. And that pattern is found in the New Testament. Look at Colossians, the 3rd chapter, and verse 17, Karen.
And whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through Him.
So the Apostle Paul told the church at Colossae, do everything, not just some things, but everything. Look at Matthew 17, verse 5. Isaac.
While he was still speaking, a bright cloud overshadowed him, and behold, a voice out of the cloud said, this is my beloved Son, whom I am well pleased. Listen to him.
Okay. Any questions about chapter 25?
What does a cherubim look like?
What is the cherubim?
Yeah. I mean, what does it look like? I mean, all you can see is wings, you know, I mean,
That's all it is.
cherubim.
Looks like a rat.
It does, it looks like a mouse with a very fluffy wingtail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how did they, I
Another
mean,
small tail going
I
out.
was just curious. I've always wondered, I would just, okay, that explained it. A rat with wings, okay.
I wouldn't call it a rat.
What?
It does look like one though.
God specifically gave directions of how it should be made.
Right,
And so they were not given the latitude of how they could make it.
right.
But
Yeah,
On the
I've always
lampstand,
wondered that too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, but whoever made that drawing had latitude to make it the way he wanted to.
Exactly.
well,
Yeah.
it's just an artist's rendition, yes.
Because
All right,
it
listen.
doesn't seem to be.
Does it give it any
but-
details of what it looks like anywhere? Do they have it just a,
I don't think so, but I will
Need to
certainly
look up.
do a little more researching.
yeah, I'm just curious.
I don't see in here that it gives the height of the
Right.
lampstand. It just tells the intricacies of what to put on it. And I'm sure all those things take up space, so they're gonna have to, take up some, but there's not really a height to it. And those could be, this big or this big, So there was some leniency, is what I'm saying, within the guidelines of what God was saying. Just stay within the guidelines, but the leniency would be, the bowl is this big and not this big, you know what I'm saying?
No, I think God gave specific
But
instructions.
where?
Just like,
I mean, how do you know the height?
Make
the
sure you
heights?
follow this
Well,
pattern.
Debbie, your question's a good question, but there are some things that we just have to accept the fact that if God said do this according to the pattern, then He's given instructions on everything, but we don't need all the details, because if you go to the end of the
Maybe they'll.
book of John, remember what John said. There are many things that were written that are not in this book, but these things were written that you might have full understanding. Okay? If we were to put everything that was taking place from the days of creation through Jesus Christ, there wouldn't be enough libraries to hold all that information.
There you go.
What I do want you to see here,
Yeah.
although this is called a mercy seat, there is no place here for a seat. This was a lid, basically, okay? So, well, that's our second bell, so we didn't get the questions answered. We'll answer the questions next week, and we'll get into chapter 26.
That looks a lot better than that.
And I'll do it a little bit, well, I'm sorry I didn't get you a
No,
good picture,
no.
Isaac.
He hooked me up, man. That's a way.
hooked me up, didn't I?
Yeah.
I'll get you a little more information on the
You did
cherubims
fine,
next
Dale.
week,
You did
okay?
fine.
But Dale, I think it's significant that the wording is make it according to the pattern which was shown you on the mountain.
Yeah, thank you for
So
bringing that
there was a
word.
blueprint,
Yeah.
and he sees that blueprint, and those
This is what he
blueprints and
does.
patterns have to be very specific
It looks
to
different.
make everything. Now, we're not told maybe the dimensions and that type of thing, but now, like you say, they had him levity at all, and
Right.
they can get how
They
they
really don't need to know the dimensions because we're not told to make those.
We don't, but I appreciate Ron bringing out that word shown,
Yeah.
because pattern is important, but God showed Moses everything and exactly how it was to be made. There was no latitudes. And there was a reason for this, because just as there's no latitude for us in the church today, there was no latitude for the Israelites. And that's a lesson that we take from the book of Exodus and also Leviticus, is we do everything according to the pattern as God has showed us. We have the New Testament scriptures showing us exactly what we are to do. So,
Well, I mean, I want to disagree just a little bit. We're asked to go and teach and tell the world, but we're not told how to go. So there's some, I mean, what I'm saying is the pattern is to go and do it, but to ride a bus or take a bicycle, I mean, there's some, you know, if you stay within the pattern given you, that's where you stay. And then you have the latitude to make it happen, you know, in the way you need to make it happen. That's what I'm saying. And that's what I thought, that maybe the lampstand was this kind of part, that kind of thing.
yeah.
You know,
No.
stay within the direct pattern that he gives us, yes. And then there's some kind of wiggle room on how to get it done, like to
Well,
go and tell people and teach
Yeah,
them.
I won't disagree with you there, Eddie, because you remember that they use various modes of transportation in the book of Acts too. And in the book of Acts, the theme of the book of Acts is the go book. And so we do have the pattern there of actually what to teach and how it was taught. But we also have, to some extent, a pattern of the fact that they went. Sometimes they went by foot, sometimes they went by ship, but they went.
Yeah, right.
Okay? And we have modern transportation today, so whether we fly or whether we drive a car, whatever, we're still to go. All right, appreciate your comments tonight. We'll get into chapter 26 next week. Did you get everything turned off, John?
I can't. It won't work.
It won't work?
No.
Why not?
I don't know. I could never get it to pull
Power
up.
it up again?
John put a new program on it that I'm not familiar with.
Oh, really?
Yep.
To put all the little bowls and, I mean, there's some, yeah, things that have